Patient Protection Affordable Care Act. And so if there's any, my tax policy is, if you want it, pay for it. You know, if I want something, I buy it. If we want it together, then we'll pay for it, like school bond issue or whatever. We'll pay for it. Thank you. Vote for Larry Martin.
Thank you, Larry. And now a warm welcome, if you would, for Bart McCleay.
Thank you, Kobe, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here from this distinguished group. You know, we've heard some complaints about the government from some of the candidates, but the fact of the matter is the NSA is a government agency that is truly listening to the people. My campaign has a single message. Freedom has worked. From the beginning of time, we've seen multiple forms of government, but those governments have failed us in many ways. But our system of government, based in freedom, has worked. Our economic model, when it's allowed to operate in a free market system, has been a resounding success. I'm Bart McCleay, and I'm running for the United States Senate because I want to be the voice for freedom, and I want to restore the law, the Constitution that protects our freedom. And I have the background to do that for Nebraskans. First of all, my family history goes back 150 years. My father was born and raised here, and ultimately came to Omaha, where I was born and raised. My mother was from Nebraska City, where my wife was also from. And my wife was in the Porter family. Some of you may know that. They're the only family in Nebraska history to have 3 generations play Nebraska football, and she was a cheerleader for 3 years. So you know what we do on Saturday afternoons in the fall. And we're big basketball fans last night, for sure. I was an accounting major in school, and I went to law school, was on the tax review. And after law school, I clerked for 2 federal judges before joining the Q-Tech Rock law firm in Omaha, where I've been for the last 29 years. In the last 7, I was the head of the litigation group, which had me coordinate about 140 lawyers across 12 offices of the firm. If I can coordinate 140 lawyers, I'd say 100 senators are going to be a piece of cake. I've had experiences that made this a great training ground for being in the United States Senate. I understand matters important to Nebraskans, like property rights. I fought the federal government up in the Niobrara area when they had tried to restrict property rights, and we won. I was a special assistant attorney general for the state of Nebraska on the Republican River, and worked on that case before, up until the settlement. I understand water rights, and I also understand privacy rights. I represented a bank here locally that had its confidential credit card information taken and used across the United States. And we went in and we won that case and secured one of the largest single jury verdicts and judgments in Nebraska's history. I also understand the importance of veterans, and I've supported veterans in the form of representing the Wounded Warrior Project, a nationally acclaimed organization, which had its name used and money siphoned away. And I went in, we stopped them, and we got their money back. These are experiences that will help me on the floor of the United States Senate, because these are the kind of issues we face, and I have that qualification. I want to tell you that it's more than that, though. I've been a business lawyer. I was an accounting major. And in that capacity, I understand the economic principles that drive businesses to grow and our economy to expand. But I've also been an advocate. I've stood before juries and judges who didn't share my perspective. And you don't get to just argue to the Republicans in the room. You argue to the Democrats, the independents, and everybody up and down the socioeconomic spectrum. And I've learned how to communicate in that way. But we also have constitutional issues here. We have a government that's misled us in Benghazi. We have IRS targeting political groups. We have the Department of Justice wiretapping the Associated Press and Fox News. We have the NSA sweeping up millions upon millions of records of our people. We have the EPA doing flyovers of our farmers and ranchers, and it's going to stop. They will not fool me, or they will not trick me when it comes to constitutional legal matters. I have that background. Ladies and gentlemen, now I want to ask Kobe's 2 questions. 1, name a business. The business I want to talk to you about is the Lambton Electrical Station in Ontario. And you'll understand the point here. This company was told to shut down the coal delivery to the plant. They didn't have another plant set up at the time, even though they planned to spend another several $billion building one. provided a million homes electricity, and it provided 300 jobs to people, and they decided they're just going to end it. It makes no sense, and it would make no sense here in Nebraska either, where coal supplies 70% of electricity. Minimum wage. Would I agree with it? No. Why not? Because not only because it would increase cost for business, but I wouldn't do it to poor people. I wouldn't hurt them. 80 to 90% of the economists in the country will tell you that it hurts poor people by increasing unemployment. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to be the voice for freedom. We're roaring into Washington. I want you to jump on the train with me. We're going to tell them that freedom works. Thank you very much.
Now, if you would, a warm welcome for Shane Osborne.
Good afternoon, and it's great to see what LIBA has become over the past few years. This is a wonderful room, and I thought I'd start out by telling you a little bit about my background before I get to answer the questions, and I will answer them. Grew up outside of Norfolk, raised by a single mom. She worked 3 jobs and taught me everything I needed to know about work ethic. She became director of nursing at the Veterans Home. They were my surrogate fathers. That's where my passion of service above self came from. And went to the University of Nebraska in 1992 on an ROTC scholarship. Wouldn't have been able to afford college without it. Received a degree in mathematics and statistics from the University of Nebraska during our glory years of football, and headed off to live my dream. For 9 years, I flew for the Navy. People say, Shane, what's being a Navy pilot have to do with being a good United States Senator? I say, not a whole lot. But I'll tell you what, leadership matters. I grew up in the United States Navy. You learn a lot about yourself. And the guy on the left, he was told, either you're going to jail or you're enlisting. The guy on the right's a Rhodes Scholar that speaks 6 languages. You learn how to work with diverse backgrounds. You also learn what pressure really, truly means. Sitting in a chair in China and being interrogated for 12 straight days, having your life and your crew's life threatened, you learn about your faith and the importance of service above self and taking care of your crew. That's pressure that I can transfer to standing up in Washington, D.C. I make a joke. I tell you, the communists can't break me, Harry Reid's not going to, right? And so, later that year, after I had an incident in China in 2001, I went to the war on terror in Afghanistan. As a matter of fact, I've collected intelligence off of every country we're having problems with here today. I know a lot about what's going on in the world and how ugly a place it can be. When I got out of the Navy, I came back. A lot of you in this room helped me get elected to state treasurer. We drove all over this state. And I've now currently on this run put on almost 34,000 miles, hit all 93 counties. That's how it gets done in Nebraska. People want to meet you and shake your hand. I kept my promise as your state treasurer. Over a 4-year period, I cut, not shrunk, but cut. Didn't slow growth, but cut the budget 12%. Shrunk the staff by a quarter. But we improved the office so much that we won the National Treasury Marquee Award, the top treasurer's office in the country, public or private. So I can actually tell you as a candidate that I've shrunk government. How many candidates have you ever talked to that could say that? I also brought you transparency. For under 40 grand, I took every aspect of the state budget and put it online. The government's going to take our money. The least they can do is give us a receipt, right? That's something that I find very important. I rose to the leadership in the State Treasurers Association nationally, even though there were only about 8 Republican treasurers in the country. So I know how to work with people from all backgrounds and all kinds. When I got done, and it goes to our questions here today, when I stepped back and didn't run for re-election, I went to the private sector. I was a single dad with sole custody of 3 kids. My priorities were very simple. Take care of your family and get out there and start some businesses. I started a business where it's a financial services firm where we focus on hiring post 9/11 veterans coming back from the war on terror. Not just give them a job, but a career, get their securities licenses. And that's my personal experience. Here there are 4 veterans, not a lot of cash. We're getting this thing going, trying to open up. We just got our Bloombergs. We haven't even executed the trade. And FINRA comes in and starts a 2-month audit of us. We had no transactions to audit. For 2 months, they held us up. We had to go out and do another capital raise just to get things going. I also started another compliance business that has benefited from the overreach of government, reaching into businesses' lives from unclaimed property auditing. So we work in a pro-business aspect to do that. And finally, my wife and I, we run a small business aviation insurance consulting together. The point I'm making is I got to sign the front of a paycheck, not just the back of one. I see 3 issues facing us today. 1, the debt. I know how to shrink government. I've done it. It's unsustainable. Number 2, the regulatory environment. Every time I talk to businessmen and women, and small businessmen and women are the true job creators, right? 110% of job growth comes from these folks, not from big businesses, but from small and medium. They tell me the regulatory environment is unsustainable. I think there's a way we can grow this economy, because that's the only way we're truly going to get ourselves out of these problems. hold what we got, shrink government, but we've got to grow the economy. That's the North American energy independence. I believe strongly, not just from the job growth aspects and getting more people with skin in the game, right? That's what we want, is people skin in the game, paying some taxes, but also from the national defense aspect. So we don't have to rely on energy from countries that don't particularly care for us. My final point, keeping our promise to veterans. We're chewing our men and women up, sending them to multiple deployments. They're coming back with issues. I started the Nebraska Soldiers Foundation, where we help fund PTSD clinics across the state. The latest one we just opened up in North Platte, working with that ease. It's a passion of mine, and it goes right into the Obamacare issue. It's meant to fail. It's meant to be a single-payer healthcare system, and I'm saying the same thing I have since 2009 when I led rallies all across the state speaking out against it. If you want to see how government-run healthcare works, go down to the VA. It's the largest healthcare system in our country, and it's completely government-run. Our veterans are waiting up to 2 years just to get processed through. Hundreds are dying every year, thousands, because they can't get access to healthcare. And it's not a money problem, it's a government-run problem. I'm asking for your support. I need your help. Leadership matters, right? And you know you can trust me. I will keep my word just like I did as a United States Naval officer and just like I did as state treasurer. Thanks for having me.
Let's keep the applause going for Ben Sass, if you will.
Thanks, Cody, and thanks for LIBA. You guys do really important work. I'm going to start with the minimum wage question because it's easy, but I also want to affirm something Bart said and amplify it a little bit. I'm opposed to increasing the minimum wage. Bart's right. 80+% of economists will tell you that it actually will slow the economy and hurt poor people, but they will also tell you that only about 11% of the people earning minimum wage today are the primary wage earner for their family. So I actually think we don't just have a crisis in the country in terms of dishonest leadership and a debt and deficit crisis. We have a crisis in the conservative movement in that we don't win these debates. And the debate about increasing the minimum wage that's going to come for the 2014 election cycle isn't actually about hurting people, helping people. It's about partisan gain. And the Republicans need to be able to win debates, and we don't do that right now. And so I think the Republicans, I say this only somewhat tongue-in-cheek, I think the Republicans should respond by proposing a minimum wage of $165 an hour. Because the reality is, the Democrats can't explain to you why you can just decree more things from the center and actually get better outcomes. This is just a way to try to divide the country and pretend you're for helping people in a way that isn't economically honest. And so we need to have a different kind of conversation in America, and we need a different kind of conservative movement that actually wins some debates. I'm a 41-year-old non-politician, and I'm running because I believe we have a moral obligation to leave America as great and as free and as opportunity-filled for our kids and grandkids as we inherited it. And we're not on a path to doing that. I think the most significant moment in American politics the last 2 years is when President Obama gave the "You Didn't Build That" speech. I'm a fifth-generation Nebraskan. My mom's side of the family are farmers from Arlington and Hooper. My dad's side from Fairbury, Beatrice, Diller area. The most important work experiences I've ever had, the most pleasurable, were lying about my age to get into Husker football games, to sell pop when we didn't have tickets when I was in junior high and high school. But the most important formative experiences are from ages 9 to 15, walking beans and detasseling corn. And the work ethic that comes from being a Nebraskan, we don't understand how blessed we are to have that. My wife is an Air Force brat, and so she didn't grow up in Nebraska. And so when I was going to propose to her, I had this ring in my fist, and I thought, you know, providentially, I think God is calling me to marry you